So this is just a nonsense hangout just to get the ability to stream. Whoops. Oh no, that's fine. No. Do I do that? No. Not sure. Anyway, this is just a project that's been working on for... Oh, just move that out of the way, make that really small. So this little black box is where the camera should be. Anywho, so this is a 3D printer project, and need to modify the loop. But so this loop needs to be modified because the original one was prone to breaking, because when this is printed out, the striations of the print medium didn't provide enough strength to this loop to prevent it from breaking. But we don't necessarily want to have this big hulking mass of plastic at the top of the crucifix. So we're just trying to work through different, so this was just a test, different ways to provide a loop. So this essentially is a problem that jewelry manufacturers had. So if you were thinking of getting into jewelry, these are the kinds of problems that you would have to solve. And as this is 3D printed, we at least can do some iterative design tests. So this could be printed out and tested in its form to see how that would stand up compared to the original one, which design-wise looks fine. There's no problem with it, but from a pragmatic point of view, if we are just leaving the object in its plastic form and then either painting it or putting gold leaf on it or decorating it or somehow using it as the basis to create a piece of costume jewelry, we have to consider these sorts of little problems, because that on its own isn't strong enough. So add mesh to, oh, that's a massive, oh right, because we've got this set up for printing. So I have to design something that is 62. We have to design something that's going to be robust enough to take the abuse that might be expected from a piece of costume jewelry. So this is just fiddling around. See what we can come up with. So let's delete that bottom face, we don't need that. Insert. Oh right, one thing we need to do is, before we start doing all that, is reset the scale. That ensures that our measurements and units are correctly positioned, or correct relative to our object. So view, no, it's not view, it's object. Object, apply, rotation and scale. So now that's reset, so we can ensure, oh, well, you can't see the annotations on screen now, but that's reset. So now all our adjustments are relative to 240 millimeters. So what is that? Whoops. Inset 2.5. Yeah. Enter. Don't need these three faces. Delete. Link. Scale. Is it Z0? Yeah. And then, come on. So let's hide this one. So that's loop 2. This will be loop 3. What am I raking? What am I making? It's just a 3D printer project. It's a Crucifix, but trying to solve a problem where the original loop, the original hanging loop, is not strong enough and is prone to snapping because this is 3D printed. So if you use, obviously depending on what printing medium you're using, FDM for example, it doesn't provide enough structure, enough strength to maintain its integrity. Basically it breaks too easily. So looking to try different more robust designs. So this is the kind of thing, even though it's a piece of plastic, or it will be a piece of plastic when it's printed on a 3D printer, thanks to Xi exclamation mark. Is one supposed to sound surprised by saying your name Xi? Yeah, so it's just making this more robust. So just trying different designs. So where are, let's go back to normal layout. Object mode. So obviously Blender in this mode, in this restricted layout, is tricky to work with. So what you'll often find you need to do is create your own layouts so that join left, double click, talk prop, properties. So we want viewport display, wireframe, whoops, actually it's wireframe, TikTok. So now we can see the wireframe of our object. So yeah, it's just a question of, let's enable subdivision surface, modifiers, add modifier, generate subdivision surface. Of course you can't see the annotations now, so I have to wait until 2, so we can see how, let's hide that one. see what subdivision surface does. So now what we need to do is edit this. So let's fill, 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 and we want this to be squarer. So this is just a quick way of squaring up the shape, adding edge loops, because the distribution of the subdivision is dependent on the structure of the mesh. So the more subdivisions or structure you have in place, the more distributed the subdivisions and the squarer the end result. But we don't want to do that just yet. So undo all of that. Undo. Because what we want to do is just get a basic what's that, 3.5. We just want to get a basic shape first, or profile. We just want to get a basic profile, and then once we've got a basic profile, so that is essentially the shape, the basic shape, we can then square it up. And the problem is that sometimes it's a bit too big, so we just need to try to make some adjustments to this that are, relatively speaking, proportionate. So it's going to viewpoint front. Is it front? Yeah. Just trying to make some adjustments that are proportionate to the overall object, because we don't want this loop to dominate the overall crucifix, or the main object. But it has to be robust enough to withstand the pressures of daily use. Because I think what happened before is that it broke. Well, these are the weak points. So this section at the top, when that's printed, the striations of the printed medium FDM medium basically means that this is only at best 3 lines or 3 spooges of medium that spooge out of the nozzle, and just a little bit of fill to create the impression of the rounded shape. So it needs more material there. So this might alleviate that problem a little bit. So let's square that up. But keep the inside rounded. Subdivisions, increase those again. But is also trying to create a relatively interesting shape. So you don't necessarily want it to be a square. Or do we? So that's z-axis 1. So undo, so gz1 gz1, because then we can select those bottom loops. And individual origins. Oops, what's that doing? That's gone a bit weird. Okay, so what did I do there? Undo. Move that up. So gz1 gz1. Right, so select, shift click select, individual origins, scale. That's a bit, don't like that. Let's try and adjust these. You see, need some limiting structure in here somehow. Whoops. Median. So that's obviously too wide now, so we've got to be careful about getting too close to the edge, because when this is 3D printed, it'll cause potential definition problems, because the medium may define that edge, but when it starts to get into dropping in layers to describe this shape, it's going to get messy. Because these might be too close together. What was the other one like? I like the square appearance of that. So the weak points are going to be where it joins, when it's printed, where it joins the top of the crucifix, and potentially these corners. So we could round those, but we start to get into really thick shapes. It looks a little crude. Whoops. I'll do one, 2, 3. So yeah, I mean, this is basically jewelry design, albeit custom jewelry in this case, or if one were to use this as a object for molding, you'd obviously then do a bit of prep, filling gaps and that kind of thing. Why is that uneven? Leading point. Oops, got the wrong one. looks a bit too chunky. Let's reduce the height. And its width in object mode, or select 1/2, deselect. So this is going to be tricky because we're on such a tiny scale for printing. It's too small or too much of it. Oops. Two. So that definitely looks a bit more robust than the original. So it's just going to be a question of printing, 3D printing a version of this with these two. So there's that one. And there's that one, and seeing which provides the, not necessarily the strongest, but a solid basis around which or from which we reduce the potential for breakage. Let's just save this. I'll save as. Save increment. Right, so we'll call it quits there. This was just basically a stream to get this all TikTok stuff back up and running because the account hadn't been used for so long. I think what I might do in the next one is export this once the live stream stuff has been sorted out. Might export this and then bring it into the 3D printing slicer program so that we can see how it's going to interpret these new structures, and that will give us an idea of what's going to happen. So might do, if we do another stream, might take a look at that. So we'll export this in a format that's compatible for 3D printing and then take a look at that. So thanks for looking, lurkers, thanks for the hearts, and we'll see you on the next one, whenever that is. Hopefully the account doesn't get suspended. Anyway, bye for now. Yoink.